Welcome to the Beyond Homelessness podcast, a series that shares the stories of young people who have experienced homelessness and those who work within the system designed to support them. Beyond Homelessness is a platform for young people to be heard, to tell stories that inspire, to have a voice at the table and see themselves represented. We believe that stories are a form of magic, that they can create new worlds, convey emotions, and inspire ideas. The stories you will hear in this series not only demonstrate the strength and resilience of the people sharing them, but will also get you thinking about viewpoints beyond your own and challenge you to consider the change that needs to take place in order to build a future where youth homelessness does not exist.
Hello, it's Youth Homelessness Matters Day today. My name is Shirley and I'm a peer worker from Project Youth. So I have Simon Kennedy with me here today. Hi Simon.
Hey Shirley, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. So I have 3 questions for you today. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So how can you in your role help us move beyond youth homelessness?
Yeah, and look, we've had conversations about this before, and even hearing about your story and all the work Project Youth does. What's become clear to me is it's often just not about the shelter and the home above people's heads, or the roof above people's heads. It's about trauma, it's about counselling, it's about life support, it's about opportunity. And homelessness is can be such a multifaceted, multi-causal problem. People's families, people's personal circumstances, economic or family trauma. And I think it really requires all levels of government. You know, traditionally the state government is the level of government that's responsible for housing and homelessness. But really I think it requires all 3 levels of government to work together, local, state and federal, but not just government. It requires community, it requires non-profits like Project Youth, and I know the amazing work Project Youth does. You know, it tackles mental counselling, you guys tackle the legal aspect of it, you tackle the education and schooling aspect of it, the shelter aspect of it, the beds. But I think one of the things that's become extremely clear to me, and largely through Project Youth advocacy and even hearing some of your own story and stories of some of the people here, is it's drastically underfunded. I know you've got a question you're going to ask about that a little later, but funding has to be part of the answer. And it's something I've spoken about in Parliament, speaking about the work Project Youth has done, some of the stories, some of the numbers you guys have. But getting the federal government, getting them, you know, whether that's a Labor or Liberal government that's elected in 3 weeks' time, either government, I think it really needs to be bipartisan to give greater funding to youth and youth homelessness. And the upside of youth homelessness is youth opportunity, right? We need to have productive opportunities so youth don't fall into homelessness. And what worries me is I hear numbers like yours, and I think you're about to talk about your numbers, but the numbers seem to be going the wrong way in this as well, and that's very concerning.
Thanks, Simon. So, the next question is about, last year Project Youth did have to turn away 958 young people. Because we have to turn away due to, we are lack of capability and resource, so what can these young people go to, when we are saying no, we are full?
Yeah, and the short answer is I don't know. I've spoken to some of the other homelessness organisations in the Shire, and they tell me they go down to the National Park. There's people sleeping in the National Park in tents. There's people living out of cars in the car parks here at Cronulla. And I think there isn't a really good answer for where those 958 people go. And it worries me. And it's unacceptable. I don't think there's any young person who doesn't have a safe roof over their head, is living in harm, is living in trauma, should have to hear the words, "I'm full." "Oh, we're full, good luck, go somewhere else." It's, I think you measure the advancement of a society, of how it takes care of its most vulnerable. And I think young people are often the most vulnerable people in our society. And young people coming from trauma or bad circumstances are even more vulnerable still. So, I don't think there's a good answer to that today. That's not acceptable. And as we touched on earlier, I think more funding has to be part of that solution. And it's very concerning. The fact, it breaks my heart when some of the other agencies here in Sutherland Shire, which is actually a reasonably more affluent electorate. You know, there's much worse off places in the Sutherland Shire. But to hear we've got people in the car parks here at Cronulla sleeping rough, we've got people living in tents in the Royal National Park in the southern here, it's heartbreaking.
Thank you. So, how would you see like future of youth homelessness does not exist with likelihood?
Look, it would be amazing if, you know, Project Youth got out of the business, youth homelessness didn't exist and we didn't need you. I'm sure you'd have plenty of other services to help young people with, which I know you're doing, but I think that's a great aim and something we should aim for. But again, what I've learned partly from dealing with you guys is it's a very multifaceted problem. It's not just a shelter over people's heads. It's not just having enough housing. Having affordable housing, by the way, is a huge problem in itself in Australia. Like, that is an enormous problem. It's multi-causal. There's banks that are contributing to it, high levels of immigration, you know, inequalities contributing to that. So there's all those things just around housing itself. But then if you look at the subset of housing and youth homelessness, there's often family trauma, domestic violence, drug and alcohol use, economic disempowerment, education or lack thereof, mental health, trauma, and I think unless we're doing holistic solutions across all levels of government, across non-profits, and then also around communities. I think one of the, as we get into bigger and bigger cities and as we get into more and more impersonal areas, one of the things we lack is people, how often people just walk past, people sleeping rough. Like there's a gentleman who sleeps rough down here at Cronulla Station, actually. I think he's originally from New Zealand. I've gone up and spoken to him and asked him if he needs help, and what he says is okay. But, you know, for a lot of my life, I just walk past people like that. And I think it's not because people struggle for empathy or whatever. It's you feel sort of a little bit powerless in what you do. And I think the lovely thing in working for an organisation like you, Shirley, and the work you do and Project Youth do, the lovely thing about being an MP is you do feel empowered to actually address these issues, stand up for people and fight for funding to address things like this. But look, I'm giving you a lot of answers. I know you've worked in this space, had experience in this space. At some point you may have better answers than me, and I should be listening, not talking.
Thank you, Simon. Actually, can I add an extra question?
Sure, you can add as many as you want.
Okay. So, what do you like as an MP that you did already for support youth homelessness?
Look, I've spoken about in Parliament. I've met with all the local homeless organisations, be it you guys, be it Hopefield down the road, be it some of the women's acute care shelters like Family Co. We're advocating for funding, increased funding, and shelter in the next election, particularly around domestic violence, women and children who are actually escaping homelessness. We've had specific cases referred to us where we've written to New South Wales Housing and asked for New South Wales Housing to step in for specific cases. I was door knocking in Gaimea about 3 weeks ago, and there was a mother and daughter there who had been given notice to move out. They were living in a place that was being bulldozed and redeveloped, not a very well-appointed place, and they were trying to find somewhere else to live. And they've been trying to find places to live for about 4 months, and they had 3 weeks to go. And she was like, I can't find somewhere to live. And I thought there must have been something wrong with their application. So I said, can you send me your application? And I forwarded it to a couple of real estate agents in the Sutherland Shire that I've got to know, and including one of the last places they went for. And they said, we had 40 applicants go for that last apartment in Miranda that they went for, and they had 2 cats. And they said, what we do generally is we just give people with pets, when we've got that many applications, we just put them in a different pile. So here were a couple of people, and she'd originally been avoiding domestic violence, the mother, and here were 2 people who, she had a job, she could service the income, she wasn't looking for a handout, and was 2 weeks away in panic of not knowing where they would be sleeping. Now, thankfully, when we raised it to the real estate agent went and explained it to one of their owners, and they found an apartment for them. But this is someone who's, you know, not even suffering from trauma, is fully employed, has has great opportunities, but just the housing shortage and imbalance in Australia right now is driving prices up where people like this are actually, potentially facing homelessness. It's just not good enough.
Thank
Some
you.
hecklers, I think, behind us.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for coming here and answering these interview questions. And I will always hold you accountability.
Cool. I don't doubt.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The Beyond Homelessness podcast is brought to you by Project Youth, a community-based charity serving the young people of the Sutherland Shire and St. George area in Sydney, Australia. It is a series about young people, told by young people, and produced by young people. By listening today, you have supported the training and employment pathways for young people who are involved in the production of the podcast. Project Youth seeks to create a future where youth homelessness does not exist. If you'd like to know more about the work of Project Youth, the stories of the young people we support, or find ways in which you can be involved, head to our website at projectyouth.org.au or follow us on social media. See the bio for links.